If you've ever spent a ridiculous amount of money on tools that you shouldn't have, go ahead to the bottom of this video and hit that thumbs up button. What's up guys? In this video we're going to talk about track saws. As you see here, I've got 5 different track saws, and as a one-man show that is pretty ridiculous. I've spent more money on track saws than I should have over the years, so I'm hoping in this video I can give you some advice, share the things that I have learned the hard way with you so that you don't have to make the same mistakes I did, and I'll tell you what I would do track saw wise if I could go back in time. First off, what saws do we have here? We have the Festool TSC55, which is the cordless track saw. We have the HKC55, which is the cordless track saw, which uses a track like that. I have the Mafell 55 corded. Then I have the corded TS55 as well as the corded TS75. So now how does one end up with 5 different track saws? I'll take you back in time and I'll tell you where I went wrong. I started off my business with this TS55 track saw. At the time, it was a great purchase. I believe they did not have the cordless model out at that time. This was probably 7 years ago or so that I made this purchase. Shortly after that, I realized I needed a track saw in the shop too, as well as on site, because I was constantly going back and forth and moving the track saw from the job site and having it left on the job site and not being available in the shop was really annoying. So I thought a good complement at that time would be to get the TS75. Reason being, it's more powerful and it has a much deeper, a larger blade, which gives you a deeper depth of cut. My thinking was the TS55 would shine for its size on breaking down sheet goods, while the TS75 would be great if I needed to straight line rip some solid lumber, like some 2-inch walnut slab or something like that. I would be able to use this as a straight line rip saw and they would complement each other really well. So here's what happened in reality. I really never needed a straight line rip saw, and I really never needed that depth of cut that this saw offered me. I would have always been able to get by with this TS55 just fine. So needing the larger saw didn't end up being as essential as I thought it would be. After a couple years of use, Festool has a great warranty, and it's a good thing because I've had to send in more Festool tools for warranty work than any other. Over time, the motor on this got weaker and weaker and weaker until the saw was basically useless. I did end up having to have it rebuilt, and that cost me $200-300 bucks to have everything fixed on it to get it in working condition again. So after that experience, honestly, I was just never really happy with the Festool saws. I felt like both of these saws were underpowered. So then whenever they came out with this cordless track saw, I didn't even look at it. I didn't even pay attention to it because I thought, if Festool can't give me a corded saw with some decent power, there's no way they're going to give me a cordless saw with power. However, as time went on, I posted something on Instagram about track saws, and I got a ton of feedback with guys saying how much they loved this cordless track saw from Festool, and that it actually had more power than the corded TS55, which blew my mind. So I got so much feedback, and I knew that cordless would be great on the job site, so I decided to pull the trigger and kind of take a leap of faith. I really wanted a cordless track saw, and I looked really hard at the DeWalt. However, with all the research I did, I just didn't feel like it was a refined enough saw to meet the kinds of demands I was going to put on it. And I knew I wouldn't be happy with it. The biggest draw for me with the DeWalt saw was the fact that I'm on the DeWalt platform and I have all the batteries. That all being said, I ended up pulling the trigger on the TSC55. Incredibly impressed with this saw. The power is fantastic. it actually spits the dust into this bag on the back pretty well, all things considered. And I've just been absolutely thrilled with it ever since I purchased it for the job site. So backing up a little bit, I actually, whenever I purchased this cordless track saw, the motor on this one was still bad. I hadn't had it rebuilt yet. So I had this one on the job site. I had these two in the shop. The 55 was basically worthless because the motor was shot, and I was still using the 75, which is just kind of big and bulky, not ideal. Well, then I started to see Mafell all the time, and a lot of guys were really hyping Mafell for the power that it had. So I thought, well, I can either rebuild this thing, which I'm not happy with, or I could purchase this corded Mafell 55, I forget what they call it, but it's the 55 model, and then maybe that'll solve my problems. And it was kind of a compulsive decision. I ended up purchasing the Mafell. It's got a lot of fantastic features. I added a Festool cord end on it so that I could plug it right into my existing hose and plug-in system, and away I went. I ended up rebuilding this saw thinking, well, I'd sell it and I'd sell the 75. Here they are, still in my shop, haven't sold them. Basically, you know, just kind of worthless money. I really need to sell them. So that brings me to the Mafell saw. I'm not gonna go into depth on it. I'll just give you the highlights. It is definitely more powerful than the Festool by far. It has a couple nice features, one of which being a scoring feature, where you just flip a little lever back here and then it'll only go down about 1 millimeter or 2 to score your sheet goods before you cut them. That's a handy feature that I like. Otherwise, it's kind of just a track saw. The bad thing about this Mafell track saw is I use Festool tracks, and if you tilt the Mafell over on a 45-degree bevel, the saw cut will not line up with the edge of your splinter guard the way it does, the way a Festool does on Festool tracks. You need either a Mafell track or I believe a Bosch track for this saw to work correctly with the splinter guard at a bevel. That's really annoying for me. So here's what I would tell you if I could go back in time and do everything over again. Obviously, they did not have the cordless Festool out at the time that I was getting into track saws. But if I was making this decision over today, what I would do, I would look past all 3 of these and I would buy 2 cordless Festools. I would have one on the job site and one in the shop. This saw has been great. I think it's the best, most versatile saw. It's been just all around good. If you're doing an absolute ton of ripping with it, maybe a corded model saw is something that you want. But I'm usually not doing a ton of high volume ripping, so this saw keeps up just fine. You are going to get 2 batteries with it. Another cool thing about this saw is it will run on just 1 battery. So if you only have 1 battery charged, okay, maybe it's got to be down here. There we go. So it will still run just on 1 battery. Because I do also use the cordless Festool HKC55, I've got 4 of these Festool batteries, so I'm always able to keep up with it pretty well. Haven't had issues with keeping up on the batteries. But it's a fantastic saw. I really like it. I wish I didn't have these other 3 and I just had another one of these. That would be wonderful. So that's my advice. If I could go back in time and do it over again, I'd own 2 of these. That wouldn't be fair if I ended the video without mentioning this wonderful saw. This is the HKC55. It is worth its weight in gold also. It gets a lot of flack online for being underpowered. I'm using it for cutting shiplap, cutting beams, occasionally 2x4s, stuff like that. It's not something that I'm cutting 2x12 southern yellow pine all day long with it. I'm using it for 1x material mostly, and I find the power is more than enough. I've heard that again, the Mafell has more power, But do I want to buy a foreign saw and have to deal with all the other battery platforms and all that stuff? No, I really don't. This has just worked great for me. It's paid for itself many, many times over, so no regrets on this purchase either. So, to end this video in summary, don't do dumb stuff like me and compulsively buy track saws and then proceed not to sell them when you say you are, or you'll end up as a one-man show with 5 track saws. But I hope this video helps you guys. I think that's about all I've got, so thanks for watching, and hope this helps.